Welcome to our deep dive into India's 2025-2026 budget, fresh out just yesterday, February 1st.
Lots to unpack, especially with this whole journey of development theme they're going for.
Right, and it's not just about the numbers, is it? It's about how this massive economy impacts people's lives. Whether you're an investor just curious about India.
Absolutely. And we're going beyond just the finance minister's speech here. We've got summary docs, visuals, uh, you know, multi-sensory budget breakdown.
Okay, I like that. So before we get lost in the weeds, though, what's the overarching strategy? It seems like they've got this four engines of growth idea.
Exactly. Like they're saying, look, India's not a one-trick pony. Agriculture,
Yeah.
MSMEs, investment exports, each needs its own attention. It's like tuning up an engine.
So it's not enough to just say we need more investment. It's about where it goes and how it works with these other engines.
Precisely. And then underpinning it all, you've got the reforms, the fuel that keeps those engines running smoothly. It's like the maintenance schedule for India's economic machine.
Okay, I'm with you. So, engine, #1 agriculture. It's not just about growing more crops, is it? They're talking about rural prosperity resilience.
Yeah, making migration a choice, not a necessity. It's really interesting how they're tying economic growth to the well-being of these rural communities.
But isn't that a huge undertaking? I mean, we're talking about millions of farmers. Where do you even begin with something like that?
Well, one place is the Prime Minister Dhananya Krishi Yojana, targeting 100 low-productivity districts, impacting something like 17 million farmers. That's like the entire population of the Netherlands.
Wow, that IS ambitious. But what does this Yojana actually do? Is it just throwing money at the problem?
No, it's more strategic than that. It's streamlining existing schemes, layering on these specialized measures like crop diversification, improving credit access, even reducing post-harvest losses.
So it's like a combo platter. Taking
Yeah.
what's already there, making it work better. A&D, adding new ingredients.
Exactly. And this focus on reducing post-harvest losses, that's huge. Some estimates say India loses enough food each year to feed an entire country.
Wow. Never thought of it that way. Okay, another thing that caught my eye was this push for self-sufficiency in pulses. Didn't they almost achieve that a while back?
They did about a decade ago. But as India's middle class grows, so does their appetite for pulses. This new mission for Atmanar Parta in pulses, it's a 6-year plan focused on tur, irad, and mazur, those essential parts of the Indian diet.
Okay, so the demand is there, but how are they supporting farmers this time? Because last time it kind of led to this glut. Prices crashed and farmers got hurt.
That's the key difference this time around. They're guaranteeing procurement at stable and remunerative prices. It's like a safety net for farmers, encouraging them to plant more knowing they won't be stuck if prices drop.
Okay, smart move. Now there's one thing I have to ask about. This Makana board in Bihar.
Huh.
What on earth IS Makana?
It's actually foxnut, and it has a ton of potential. This board is going to focus on production processing marketing, all while organizing farmers into these farmer producer organizations or FPOs.
So they're not just saying grow more foxnuts, they're thinking about the whole chain from farm to market.
Precisely. And FPOs that give farmers collective bargaining power. It's like the difference between a solo musician and a whole band, right? You get more leverage, a louder voice.
Okay, that's a great image. So, Foxnuts Engine, #1 secret weapon, diversifying India's agricultural output, A&D, empowering these rural communities. I love it. What are the challenges, though, in making this niche product mainstream?
That's a great question. You're going to need significant investment in processing and marketing, not just production, and creating awareness among consumers. Can foxnuts go mainstream, or will they always be a niche product?
Interesting points. Let's move on to Engine, #2, those mighty MSMEs. The budget calls them the backbone of India, which makes sense given they account for 45% of exports.
And this budget is taking their role seriously. They're actually revising the classification criteria. So companies need to be bigger to qualify as micro, small, or medium.
Hold on, isn't that kind of counterintuitive? Shouldn't they be making it easier to be classified as an MSME, not harder?
It's about encouraging them to scale up, become more competitive. Think about moving from the kiddie pool to the Olympic swimming lanes. The investment and turnover limits are being raised significantly to encourage growth.
So it's like saying, we believe in you, but you got to step up your game. But what about the smaller businesses that might get left behind?
That's where targeted support comes in. They're enhancing the credit guarantee scheme to make it easier to access loans. And get this, they're introducing credit cards specifically for micro enterprises.
Credit cards, seriously. I mean, won't that just increase debt for businesses that are already struggling?
Well, each card has a 5 lakh rupee limit, and they're aiming to issue 10 lakh cards in this first year. It's a bold move trying to balance quick access to funds with responsible lending. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
For sure. Okay, Make in India has been a big push, but is it just a slogan or are there actual actions in this budget?
They're putting their money where their mouth is with this national manufacturing mission. It aims to provide policy support, streamline regulations, and there's a big emphasis on clean technology, modernizing ND, making it sustainable.
So it's not just about making more, it's about making it better. But with India's huge, often unskilled workforce, is that realistic?
That's where skilling and reskilling come in. The budget talks a lot about making sure the workforce is ready for this new era of manufacturing. It's a massive undertaking, but the potential payoff is huge.
It does sound promising, but this all requires a ton of investment, right? Where's the money coming from?
That brings us to Engine #3 investment. But it's not just about money. They're talking about investing in people, the economy as a whole, A&D innovation. It's like building a house. You need the foundation, the walls, and the roof all working together.
Okay, let's break it down. What does investing in people actually look like in this budget?
Think nutritional support, making sure children and mothers have access to good food through things like Saksham Anganwadi and Poshan 2.0. They're also expanding medical education, so more doctors and nurses, and enhancing urban livelihoods.
So it's about well-being opportunity, giving people the tools to build better lives.
Precisely. Now, for the economy itself, think public-private partnerships, or PPPs. Each ministry will develop a 3-year pipeline of projects suitable for collaboration.
So the government and the private sector working together. But don't PPPs sometimes get bogged down with delays and complications?
They can, which is why they're focusing on streamlining processes and clear accountability. Plus, asset monetization is back in a big way. They plan to reinvest a whopping 10 lakh crore from this back into new projects. That's more than the entire GDP of some countries.
Whoa, 10 lakh crore. That's serious cash. But which projects are you most excited about? Is it that Jal Jeevan thing, aiming for tap water for every rural household by 2028? Or is there some hidden gem in here we're overlooking?
Jal Jeevan is definitely a game changer impacting millions. But there's also the Swami Fund tackling those stalled housing projects. A huge relief for middle-class homebuyers who've been stuck.
Ah, so it's about basic needs and fulfilling aspirations. What about investment in innovation? Is this where those futuristic Make in India dreams come in?
They're allocating 20,000 crore to boost private sector R&D, encouraging companies to push the boundaries. And there's this deep tech fund of funds to support these cutting-edge startups. Think AI, biotech things that could really transform India.
Okay, so planting the seeds for a more technologically advanced India, but isn't a lot of this riding on Engine #4 exports? You can have all this amazing stuff, but if nobody's buying it...
That's where the export promotion mission comes in. It's about improving access to credit for exporters and tackling those pesky non-tariff barriers that hinder trade, clearing the way for Indian businesses to take off globally.
Making the world India's marketplace.
Exactly. And on the tech side, they're introducing for a TradeNet. It's like a digital superhighway for international trade, cutting red tape, increasing transparency, embracing tech to make India a global trade powerhouse.
This is all incredibly exciting, but we've got to be realistic, right? None of these engines run without fuel, and that fuel is...
Reforms.
Yeah.
Tax reforms, regulatory reforms, legal reforms. It's all about making the system work better for businesses. A&D for people.
All right, so let's dive into those reforms in part 2 of our deep dive. Until then, folks, keep those engines revving.
Welcome back to our deep dive into India's 2025-2026 budget.
All right, so we've popped the hood on India's 4 engines of growth and seen some serious horsepower.
Now it's time to get under the chassis, see how these ambitious plans actually translate into action. And remember those reforms we talked about. The fuel. That's what we're digging in now.
Perfect timing, because honestly, my head's still spinning from all those initiatives and big numbers. Starting with tax reform, that's usually where things get complicated.
Actually, they're aiming for the opposite here. A simpler, taxpayer-friendly system. Less burden, easier to understand and comply with.
Okay, sure, everyone loves easier taxes, but how does that actually work? Are they just like slashing rates across the board?
It's more nuanced than that. It's about streamlining the process, reducing those exemptions and deductions, creating a more transparent system so people feel like they're actually getting a fair shake.
So it's not just about how much tax you pay, it's about the experience of paying it, making it less of a headache.
Precisely. And on the corporate side, they're continuing to reduce the corporate tax rate, making India more attractive to foreign investors.
Speaking of which, what about the financial sector? Any big changes there?
One big one is increasing the FDI limit in insurance to 100% FAN. So foreign companies can now fully own Indian insurance firms, potentially bringing in more capital and expertise.
But won't that hurt domestic companies? Is it wise to just open up such a crucial sector to foreign competition like that? It's a calculated risk. The hope is that this increased competition will ultimately benefit the sector as a whole, leading to better products and services for consumers. And don't forget, with greater FDI comes the potential for job creation and technology transfer.
Okay, so weighing those potential benefits against the risks. Makes sense. Now, everyone's probably wondering about personal income tax. Any changes there?
They've actually revamped the entire income tax structure, introduced new slabs and rates.
All right, give us the breakdown. What are the new slabs?
Okay, hold on to your hats. For income up to 4 lakh rupees, zero tax. Then from 4 to 8 lakh rupees, it's 5% tax, 10% for 8 to 12 lakh rupees. And the highest slab is 30% for anything above 24 lakh rupees.
Wait, zero tax up to 4 lakh rupees? That's a game changer, especially for those lower income earners.
Exactly. And with the standard deduction for salaried individuals, the effective tax-free limit goes even higher. It's a big win for the middle class, putting more money back in their pockets.
This all sounds fantastic on paper, but how does it translate into real-world impact? Can you give me an example? Sure, imagine someone earning, say, 18 lakh rupees a year. Under the new regime, they'd save around 70,000 rupees in taxes. Someone earning 25 lakh rupees would save over 1 lakh rupees.
Wow. That's not just spare change. That's money that can be invested, spent, it fuels the economy. Are there any downsides to this new tax regime, though?
Well, some people might actually end up paying more under the new regime, depending on their individual circumstances and how they use those deductions and exemptions. It really comes down to your financial situation and how you plan your taxes.
So it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. People need to crunch the numbers and see what works best for them.
Exactly. It's all about making those informed choices.
Huh.
Now, beyond just tax reform, let's zoom back out to those four engines. We were talking about agriculture earlier. All those ambitious plans for rural India. What stood out to you?
Oh, the scale is just mind-boggling. 17 million farmers potentially impacted by that Dhan-Dhanya Krishi Yojana. It's like transforming the entire agricultural landscape of a small country.
It is a massive undertaking, but they're not just throwing money at it. They're focusing on this idea of convergence,
Yeah.
bringing together existing schemes, adding these specialized measures, like promoting crop diversification and better access to credit.
And those fox nuts. I love how they're trying to turn this niche product into a major player.
Right. The Makhana board in Bihar is a great example of how they're thinking about the entire value chain. Not just production, but processing, marketing, and empowering those farmers through FPOs. It's a holistic approach.
Okay, so engine #1 seems to be firing on all cylinders. What about engine #2, those mighty MSMEs? They're getting a serious upgrade with these revised classification criteria.
Yeah, it's a bold move, pushing them to scale up, become more competitive. It's like they're saying, we see your potential, but to really thrive in this globalized economy, you need to think bigger, bolder.
Right, it's not just about surviving, it's about thriving. But what about those smaller businesses that might get left behind in that push? Are there any safety nets in place?
That's where those targeted support measures come in. The enhanced credit guarantee scheme, the credit cards for micro enterprises. It's about balancing that push for growth with support for those who need it most.
And let's not forget, Make in India. It's one thing to have a catchy slogan, but are there concrete actions in this budget to actually make it happen?
Well, they're backing it up with this national manufacturing mission, streamlining regulations, providing policy support, and prioritizing clean technology. It's about modernizing India manufacturing and making it sustainable, too.
So it's not just about making more, it's about making it better, cleaner, more efficient. But with India's vast and often unskilled workforce, is this really realistic? How do you bridge that gap?
That's where the emphasis on skilling and reskilling comes in. The budget talks a lot about investing in training programs to equip the workforce with the skills they need for this new era of manufacturing.
So it's not just about factories and machines, it's about investing in people, preparing them for the jobs of the future.
Exactly. Now, engine, #3 investment. That's where the rubber really hits the road. And it's not just about money, is it? It's about how you use it to create lasting impact.
Right, it's about investing strategically in people. The economy as a whole, A&D innovation. It's like building a house. You need the foundation, the walls, A&D the roof.
A perfect analogy. And they're doing this in multiple ways. For investing in people, think about things like those nutritional support programs, expanding medical education, improving urban livelihoods. It's about creating a healthier, more skilled, and more empowered population.
So giving people the tools to build better lives. not just handing them a handout.
Exactly. And for the economy itself, they're fostering those public-private partnerships, continuing with asset monetization. Remember that whopping 10 lakh crore they're planning to reinvest. And supporting key projects like Jal Jeevan and that Swamishov.
Right, those projects that address basic needs and those aspirations. What about investment in innovation, though? Or are we talking flying cars and robots here?
Not quite yet, but they are allocating 20,000 crore to boost private sector R&D and exploring that deep tech fund of funds to support those cutting-edge startups. Think AI, biotech, renewable energy, the kind of innovations that could really transform India in the years to come.
Okay, so laying the groundwork for a more technologically advanced, more competitive India. But isn't a lot of this contingent on engine #4 exports? I mean, you can have all this amazing stuff, but if nobody's buying it.
That's where the export promotion mission comes in. Improving access to credit for those exporters, tackling those pesky non-tariff barriers that hinder trade. It's about clearing the runway for Indian businesses to really take off globally.
So breaking down those walls and making the world India's marketplace. But it's not just about brute force, is it? There's a finesse element, too.
Absolutely. That's where Varta TradeNet comes in. This digital platform is all about streamlining international trade, cutting red tape, increasing transparency, and embracing technology to make India a true global trade powerhouse.
Okay, so we've seen those impressive engines, but none of them run without fuel. And that fuel is.
Reforms. Tax reforms, regulatory reforms, legal reforms. It's all about making the system work better for businesses, A&D for people.
All right, so let's roll up our sleeves and get into the nitty-gritty of these reforms in part 3 of our deep dive. This budget is clearly more than just numbers on a page. It's a roadmap for a very different India.
Stay tuned because the journey's just getting started.
All right, we're back for the final stretch of our deep dive into India's 2025-2026 budget. We've seen those powerful 4 engines, explored the fuel of reforms. Now it's time to see how this all comes together.
Yeah, it's like we've got all the pieces laid out right. Now we need to see how they fit together.
Exactly. We've talked a lot about those specific initiatives, the big numbers, those ambitious goals. But now I'm curious about the HATAU W. How do they actually make all this happen?
That's where those reforms become critical. They're the nuts and bolts. You know, the grease that keeps the whole machine running smoothly. Without them, those engines are going to sputter and stall.
Okay, so let's roll up our sleeves and get into those nitty-gritty details. Starting with tax reform. I guess that's usually where things get complicated for most people.
You'd think so. But they're aiming for the opposite here. A simpler, more taxpayer-friendly system. It's fascinating how they're trying to change the perception of paying taxes.
Yeah.
From a burden to a shared responsibility.
So less, tax time and more, I'm contributing to something bigger. But how do they actually achieve that? Is it just about slashing rates?
It's about simplifying the process, making it more transparent and understandable. They're reducing those exemptions and deductions, creating a system where people feel like they're getting a fair shake, not being nickel and dimed.
Right, right. And on the corporate side, they're continuing to lower the corporate tax rate, making India a more attractive destination for those foreign investors.
Exactly. It's about competing on that global stage, attracting those big players and the jobs and technology they bring. But there's a balancing act, making sure domestic companies aren't squeezed out in the process.
Speaking of balancing acts, what about the financial sector? Any big shakeups there?
A significant one is increasing that FDI limit in insurance to a full 100%. So foreign companies can now fully own Indian insurance firms.
Wow, 100%. That seems like a huge risk, opening up such a vital sector to, complete foreign control. What's the rationale behind that?
It's a calculated gamble, for sure. The hope is that increased competition will lead to better products and services for consumers, lower premiums, more innovation. And don't forget, with greater FDI comes the potential for job creation and technology transfer.
Okay, so the potential benefits are there, but it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out in the long run. Now, everyone's probably wondering about personal income tax, any changes there?
They've actually overhauled that entire income tax structure, introducing new slabs and rates designed to simplify things and provide relief for most taxpayers.
Hit us with the highlights. What are the new slabs?
Okay, get ready for this. For income up to 4 lakh rupees, zero tax. Then from 4 to 8 lakh rupees, it's 5% tax, 10% for 8 to 12 lakh rupees, and the highest slab is 30% for anything above 24 lakh rupees. It's a pretty significant shift.
Zero tax up to 4 lakh. That's a huge EE win for those lower income earners. And with the standard deduction for salaried individuals, that effective tax-free limit goes even higher. But are there any potential downsides to this new tax regime? Could it backfire for some people?
Yeah, it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. Some folks, especially those who really utilize those deductions and exemptions under the old regime, might actually end up paying more under this new system. It really depends on your individual financial situation and how you plan those taxes.
So it's not just about blindly switching to the new regime. People need to do their homework, see what makes the most sense for their specific circumstances.
Exactly. It's all about making those informed choices.
Yeah.
Now, beyond just tax reform, let's zoom back out and revisit those four engines. We were talking about agriculture earlier. All those ambitious plans to revitalize rural India. They're going all in on that, making migration a choice, not a necessity idea. And it's exciting.
Right, and that's huge GE, addressing one of India's biggest challenges head on. And they seem to be backing it up with concrete actions, like that Dhan Dhanya Krishi Yojana impacting millions of farmers, that focus on foxnuts as a potential export powerhouse, and emphasizing those FPOs to empower farmers.
Exactly. And don't forget that focus on sustainability, too.
Yeah.
They're modernizing agriculture, but also making it more environmentally friendly. Try to change the whole narrative around agriculture in India, make it more appealing to younger generations.
Yeah, it's not just about surviving, it's about thriving, innovating, and building a more resilient agricultural sector. Now, shifting gears to Engine #2, those MSMEs are getting a serious upgrade with those revised classification criteria, pushing them to scale up and become more competitive on that global stage.
It's a bold move, but I think it's the right one. It's like they're saying, we see your potential, but to really thrive in this globalized economy, you need to think bigger, bolder.
Right, it's not just about surviving, it's about thriving. But are they risking leaving smaller businesses behind in that push for growth?
That's where those targeted support measures become crucial, like the enhanced credit guarantee scheme, those credit cards for micro enterprises. It's about providing that safety net, making sure everyone has a chance to succeed.
Okay, that makes sense. And then there's Make in India, a slogan we've been hearing for a while, but this budget seems to be putting some real muscle behind it.
Oh, yeah. They're not just talking the talk. They're walking the walk with that national manufacturing mission. Streamlining regulations, providing policy support, prioritizing clean technology, and investing heavily in skilling and reskilling. It's a comprehensive approach to modernizing Indian manufacturing and making it globally competitive.
So it's not just about churning out more stuff, it's about making those high-quality, innovative, and sustainable products that can really compete on the world stage. But with India's massive population and infrastructure challenges, can they actually pull this off?
That's the billion-dollar question.
Yeah.
But it's clear they're committed to making it happen.
Okay.
Now, Engine #3, investment, that's where the rubber really hits the road. And it's not just about pouring money into projects. It's about investing strategically for long-term impact.
Right. It's about investing in people, the economy as a whole, and in innovation, building that solid foundation for sustainable growth.
Absolutely. They're taking a multi-pronged approach. Those nutritional support programs, expanded medical education, enhancing urban livelihoods, fostering public-private partnerships, continuing with asset monetization, and supporting those game-changing projects like Jal Jeevan and that Swamith Fund. It's about addressing those immediate needs while also laying the groundwork for a brighter future.
So it's about balancing those short-term wins with long-term vision.
Exactly. And let's not forget about fostering innovation, allocating significant funds for private sector R&D, and supporting those cutting-edge startups through that deep tech fund of funds. It's about nurturing that entrepreneurial spirit, encouraging risk-taking, and pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
So they're planting the seeds for a more technologically advanced, more competitive India. But isn't a lot of this success contingent on Engine #4, exports? You can have all these amazing products and innovations, but if nobody's buying them...
You're absolutely right. That's why they're going all in on that expert promotion mission, improving access to credit for exporters, tackling those non-tariff barriers, and just making it easier for Indian businesses to compete on a global stage. They're essentially saying, we're open for business, world.
And they're not just relying on traditional methods, right? They're embracing technology with that Vera TradeNet, creating that digital superhighway for international trade.
Exactly. It's about streamlining processes, cutting red tape, increasing transparency, and making India a more attractive and reliable trading partner. But none of this works without those crucial reforms, those changes to the system itself.
Right. Those tax reforms, regulatory reforms, legal reforms, they're like the oil that keeps those four engines running smoothly.
And they're not just tinkering around the edges. They're aiming for a simpler, more transparent tax system, streamlining regulations, reducing the burden on businesses, and making the legal landscape less intimidating and more predictable. It's about creating an environment where businesses can thrive and innovation can flourish.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into India's 2025-2026 budget, what's the big takeaway for our listeners? What should they be paying attention to as this all unfolds?
I think the key takeaway is this. This budget is a bold statement of intent. It's a roadmap for a very different India, one that's not afraid to embrace change, take calculated risks, and aim for the stars. It recognizes the challenges, but it also highlights those immense opportunities that lie ahead.
It's not just about numbers on a page. It's about a vision for a more prosperous, a more equitable, and more globally competitive India.
Exactly. And while the success of this vision ultimately depends on effective implementation and execution, it's clear that India is on a journey of transformation, a journey that's worth watching closely.
Absolutely. And that's what we'll be doing here at the Deep Dive, keeping you informed and providing those insights as this journey unfolds. Thanks for joining us, folks, and stay curious.